Okay, welcome to today's session. It's mainly on the inspection portion of the contract, the inspection contingency. And it starts off with this paragraph number 11, waiver of contingencies. So the headline is waiver of contingencies. If this agreement is contingent on buyer's right to inspect and or repair the property or to verify insurability, environmental conditions, boundaries, certifications, zoning, classification, or use, or any other information regarding the property, buyer's failure to exercise any of buyer's option within the time set forth in this agreement is a waiver of that contingency, and buyer accepts the property and agrees to the release. So basically what that's stating is if the buyer doesn't meet the deadline, they're waiving it and accepting the property as is. Okay, so that's why, again, the time frame is so important, all the dates and everything like that. You just have to have a very good pulse on it so that you're protecting your client. Okay, so many times we hear the buyer sends the reply back on day 11 when it was a 10-day contingency, so it happens more often than not. So just try to help each other out, especially if you're on the other side too. If you're the list agent and it's day 9, just ask them. It's much easier and smoother to ask, and if they say no, they don't get it to you by day 10, then it's a lot easier to say, well, I gave you a shot at it. Then they turn it in day 11 and you're arguing over what day is, stuff like that. So cooperate. Number 12, buyer's due diligence inspections, rights and responsibilities. We went over this morning, and the next 5 items listed here, and I highlighted it for you, is basically the rights and responsibilities of each party. So number 1, the seller will provide access. Okay, seller will provide access to insurers, representatives, and as may be required by this agreement or by mortgage lenders, to surveyors, municipal officials, appraisers, and inspectors. In addition, unless otherwise agreed, only parties and their real estate licensee may attend any inspections. So if mom and dad are not on the contract and they want to attend the home inspection, reach out to the other agent. Because especially with cameras these days and the seller being there to let them in, okay? Just let them know so that people know who's going through their property. It's just common courtesy, okay? Number 2, buyer may make 2 pre-settlement walkthroughs inspections of the property for the limited purpose of determining that the condition of the property is as required by this agreement and any addenda. Buyer's right to these inspections is not waived by any other provision of this agreement. So this is stating that the buyers are allowed to do 2 walkthroughs, irregardless of whatever was agreed in this contract, whether the inspections were waived or not, whatever. You're allowed 2 walkthroughs. Typically, you want to do one right before settlement, okay, the pre-settlement walkthrough. But then, sometimes you'll have a buyer that says, hey, I want to come over and measure for carpeting or rugs or blinds or window treatment, stuff like that. That counts as the other one, okay? Now, some people have been cheating lately and try to take over a home inspector during that time. Again, if you're going to do that, then let the list side know that you're bringing somebody of that stature to the house, and it's very limited. So for the limited purpose of determining condition, and by limited purpose, I would almost put time in there too. So it's not like you can be there for 2.5 hours. Okay, if you're there longer than when you went for a showing, that's a little too long. Okay. 3, seller will have heating and all utilities on. Okay, so especially on these homes that are vacant, make sure that the utilities are on so that the inspectors or appraisers can test everything out, especially the water. Okay. And also with that, if you are selling a house that's vacant, just a little tip, have the seller check their insurance, because sometimes insurance will not cover a vacant home, the fine print. Okay. So just a little tip for you there. We've ran into that before where something happened at the house and the assessor comes out and it's vacant and they're like, nope, it's not covered. The fine print says that it has to be occupied. Okay. 4, all inspectors, including home inspectors, are authorized by buyer to provide a copy of any inspection report to broker for buyer. So if you represent the buyer, we're entitled to a copy. Okay. 5, seller has the right upon request, comma, to a free copy of any inspection report from the party for whom it was prepared, unless otherwise stated. Seller does not have the right to receive a copy of any lender's appraisal report. Okay, so a couple things in that line. 5 states that the seller, upon request in writing, can get a free copy of the home inspection. Okay, I know a lot of times buyers will say, well, I paid for it. You know, they're not entitled to it. I paid for it. Well, yes, but you signed a contract that says that you're going to give them a free copy upon request. We've had a discussion this morning about buyer agents just automatically sending it to the list agent. And again, that topic could be up for debate all day long, whether it's right or wrong to do that. But irregardless, in the contract, it states that if the seller wants a copy and they send it in writing that they want a copy, they get one. Okay. The other thing is sometimes sellers will say, well, I want a copy of the appraisal report. And right here is where it states, no, you're not entitled to a copy. Okay. Any questions on that section? Okay. B, buyer waives or elects at buyer's expense to have the following inspections, certifications, and investigations referred to as inspection or inspections performed by professional contractors, home inspectors, engineers, architects, and other property licensed or otherwise qualified professionals. All inspections shall be non-invasive unless otherwise agreed in writing. If the same inspector is inspecting more than one system, the inspector must comply with the home inspection law. Okay, so right there it states about who can do these inspections, and the non-invasive part means that they can just look at the outside. They can't start drilling into stuff and poking holes into things. Well, what's non-invasive? What's an example of an invasive inspection? If they see cracks in stucco and dry fit, they may ask to drill a small hole just to test the moisture behind the product and see if there's any mold or any issues behind it. Okay, so that's an example of a invasive inspection that would be needed, permission from both sides to do that, mainly the seller. Okay. C, for elected inspections, buyer will, within the contingency period stated in paragraph 13A, complete inspections, obtain any inspection reports or results referred to as a report, and accept the property, terminate this agreement, or submit a written corrective proposal to seller according to paragraphs 13B. So let's remember 13A and 13B, okay, because it's referencing that. The first item, whether you elect or waive, is home property inspections and environmental hazards. Buyer may conduct an inspection of the property, structural components, roof, exterior windows and exterior doors, exterior building material, fascia, gutters, and downspouts, swimming pools, hot tubs, and spas, appliances, electrical systems, interior and exterior plumbing, public sewer systems, heating and cooling systems, water penetration, electromagnetic fields, wetlands, and floodplain delineation, structure square footage, mold and other environmental hazards, and any other items buyer may select. If buyer, let me rephrase that, and any other items buyer may select. So we had this discussion once, chimney. That's not listed in there, but to me, that's part of the house, okay? A structural component of the house. It's the very first thing. So that would fall under this, okay? So many times I see agents put in swimming pool. It's already listed in here. You don't have to list it again, okay? If buyer elects to have a home inspection of the property as defined in the home inspection law, the home inspection must be performed by a full member in good standing of a National Home Inspection Association or a person supervised by a full member of a National Home Inspection Association in accordance with the ethical standards and code of conduct or practice of that association, or by a properly licensed or registered engineer or architect, okay? Wood infestation. Buyer may obtain a written wood destroying insect infestation inspection report from an inspector certified as a wood destroying pesticide applicator and will deliver it and all supporting documents and drawings provided by the inspector to seller. Okay. The next item is the deed restrictions and zoning. Buyer may investigate easements, deed, and use restrictions, including any historical preservations, restrictions, or ordinances that apply to the property and review local zoning ordinances. Buyer may verify that the present use of the property is permitted and may elect to make the agreement contingent upon an anticipated use. So one example of this is Airbnb, short-term rentals. That's very common. Everybody wants to do it now, okay? Everybody wants it as their side hustle. But not every property qualifies to be an Airbnb, okay? If you want to use it as an Airbnb and the property is currently, let's just say residential, and you want to use it as Airbnb short-term business, okay? Then you have to get a special use permit for that, okay? Now, when you elect this contingency here, that doesn't allow you to spend all the time to try to get the use change from residential to short-term rental, okay? What this is stating is it's allowing you, let's say 10 days to investigate what you can use it for. Okay, it can be used for a daycare, okay? But if you want to change it, there is an actual form by PAR that allows you to state what you're intending to use it as, and you get X amount of days to change it. And I can tell you most of these, you'll need at least 60 days, okay? So anytime you want to change a use, it's going to take you a little bit. It's not going to happen just in 10 days or 21 days, okay? That could take a settlement out like 3 months, okay? So just be aware that this electing this doesn't allow you to change the use, it's allowing you to investigate the use, okay? That's why it says may elect to make the agreement contingent upon an anticipated use, okay? Water service. Buyer may obtain an inspection of the quality and quantity of the water system from a properly licensed or otherwise qualified water well testing company if and as required by the inspection company. Seller at seller's expense will locate and provide access to the on-site water system. Seller will restore the property to its previous condition at seller's expense prior to settlement. So a lot of these sellers these days, some of them don't know where the well is. Okay, they don't. It's up to them though to locate it or pay somebody to locate it for them. Okay, if they have to dig it up or whatever, move a nice portion of grass to try to find it. Once they're done, then grass has to be put back at the seller's expense. Okay, so that's all spelled out there for you. Radon. Buyer may obtain a radon test of the property from a certified inspector. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, advises corrective action if the average annual exposure to radon is equal to or higher than 0.02 working levels or 4 pci/L. Okay. Then it just goes on to talk about what radon is, and if you're very concerned about it, you can definitely call that hotline down below. Okay. So it's also a notice as well. On-lot sewage, if applicable. Buyer may obtain an inspection of the individual on-lot sewage disposal system, which may include a hydraulic load test from a qualified professional inspector, if and as required by the inspection company. Seller, at seller's expense, will locate, provide access to, that means if they have to dig it up, okay, empty the individual on-lot sewage disposal system. So right there, it says that they're going to pay for the pumping of it, and provide all water needed unless otherwise agreed. Well, what water? If the property is vacant for over a week, typically a septic inspection company will want to perform what's called a hydraulic load test, where they bring in a truck with a giant tank of water and run that water through the system to make sure it's properly working. Okay, so what they're saying is if they have to do a hydraulic load test, the seller is responsible for the water. Okay. Seller will restore the property to its previous condition at seller's expense prior to settlement. Okay, and then paragraph 13C, which we'll go over here today, talks about this septic system. Okay. Property and flood insurance. Yes. Yes.
Quick. For Connor and his partner there, on the septic inspection, just so they're aware that that is done at the same time. They just can't do that right after they get a contract. It has to be, with the septic inspector present, when they pump that tank. You know what I'm talking about?
Yep. Yeah, let me clarify that a little more too, Bill. Let's say you have a seller and they say, well, it was just pumped a month ago. It only needs to be pumped every 2 or 3 years. I mean, it was just pumped a month ago. Well, the problem is you need to be able to see the bottom of the tank to make sure there's no cracks or anything like that. And you can't do that if there's a month's supply in there. Okay. So even though it's only been a month, you still have to empty it out, pump it out so that the inspector can see the bottom of the tank. That's why when you go to a house, especially one with a septic, just ask them, when was it last pumped? Okay, 3 months ago. Well, unfortunately, Mr. Seller, you're going to have to pump it again before you leave. Okay. Especially if they opt to do a home inspection, the buyer opts to do a septic inspection. Okay,
and it's something to point out to your seller too, when you list the home, to make sure they don't do it.
Yes.
They may have it scheduled and they don't even think about that. So
yep. Oh yeah, sometimes they're like, oh yeah, we're proactive. We got one coming out next week. Whoa, stop. If you're going to do that, then have it pay for the inspection then too. But if not, cancel it and let the buyer, when the buyer comes, then we'll do it. Okay. Yep, we've seen it all, haven't we, Bill? Every situation. Property and flood insurance. Buyer may determine the insurability of the property by making application for property and casualty insurance for the property to a responsible insurer. Broker for buyer, if any, otherwise broker for seller, may communicate with the insurer to assist in the insurance process. If the property is located in a specially designated flood zone, buyer may be required to carry flood insurance at buyer's expense, which may need to be ordered 14 days or more prior to settlement date. Revised flood maps and changes to federal law may substantially increase future flood insurance premiums or required insurance for formerly exempt properties. Buyers should consult with one or more flood insurance agents regarding the need for flood insurance and possible premium increases. If you show a house that's on a street and the street name is Creek Road, or some kind of body of water in the name, check for flood insurance. That's usually the telltale sign, okay, like Spring Road, that type of deal. Just check. And it's so easy now with Bright. You just click on the map and then there's the layers and then just click on flood map and it'll tell you. Now,
Is that accurate? Sean?
it's,
I didn't know that.
yeah, I was gonna say, it's not 100% accurate. So if you're like 2 or 3 houses away from the line, I would definitely consult.
The train would go on this.
Yeah, you can do that too.
Okay.
Is the definitive thing is the flood cert, right, Glenn? That you get from the
Well-
insurance company or not?
Yes, if let's say the house you're selling or buying is 50 feet high and the flood line is down below the above from the creek, but they're still saying it's flood zone, you can get a cert from an engineer and they can say, yes, this isn't in a flood zone. Somebody will have to pay to do it, but it's probably cheaper than paying flood insurance for the rest of your life. Okay, property boundaries. Buyer may engage the services of a surveyor, title abstractor, or other qualified professionals to assess the legal description, certainty, and location of boundaries and/or quantum of land. Most sellers have not had the property surveyed as it is not a requirement of property transfer in PA. Any fences, hedges, walls, and other natural or constructed barriers may or may not represent the true boundary lines of the property. Any numerical representations of size of property are approximations only and may be inaccurate. Okay. So that's kind of like stating, yeah, we may have it advertised as 0.387 acres, but that may not be 100% accurate.
Never going to-
Yes, it's never going to be, Seth says. And then lead-based paint for homes built before 78, before buyer is obligated to purchase a residential dwelling built prior to 1978, buyer has the option to conduct a risk assessment and or inspection of the property for the presence of lead-based paint. Okay. Now, the next one is a blank, elected, or waived. So there's other things that you may write in there to have inspected or whatnot. I've seen some people put in there, again, pool inspections, but that's already covered under the home inspection. I've seen some people put seller's property disclosure. Maybe the seller's property disclosure was not uploaded. So it kind of puts like a time frame for the seller to get it to you. Okay. Although I don't know if that can be a real contingency because that's kind of needed. The seller has to fill it out at some point. Brooks, any other ideas? I think we had some the last time we went through the contract about other things you could write in there.
Nothing off the top of my head that
That
can
isn't
add
covered.
in.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. The next thing I have highlighted, the inspections elected above do not apply to the following existing conditions and or items. So if somebody advertises that the pool needs a new liner, needs a new pump, okay? And you're in competing offers and you want to do a home inspection, you can put in there the pool liner, pool pump is excluded from the list. Okay. Or if they say in the disclosure, well, the refrigerator doesn't hold its cold, you can put the refrigerator in there. Okay, because the appliance will be inspected. Okay, so that's kind of like, you can put in there stuff that you already know is wrong and we're not concerned about it. And it may help you get a little edge in a competing offer. Okay. The following section is D, notices regarding property and environmental inspection. So I'm not going to go through it and read it. It's just mostly a notice. Okay, so we went through this section in conjunction with the two forms that pertain to it, the buyer's reply to inspection and the change in terms form. But this sets the deadline guideline for these contingencies. So 13, inspection contingency. The contingency period is blank days, 10 if not specified from the execution date of this agreement for each inspection elected in paragraph 12C. 10 days is probably enough time to order a home inspection and a wood inspection, maybe do just a general water test for bacteria, and that's it. Okay, for you to do it in 10 days, reply back to the seller with what you want to do. Okay, 10 days is probably not enough to do a hydraulic load test on a septic, even a normal septic test, a VA water test that tests like everything, minerals, bacteria. Okay, that usually takes about 7 business days to get back. Well, there's also weekends in there and 7 business days, so really like 9 days. Okay, and that's if they do it like the next day. You can get back in 10 days. So you may want to extend that out a little bit to like 15 days or even 21 days. Okay. Now, within the stated contingency period, and as a result of any inspection elected in paragraph 12C, except as stated in paragraph 13C, 1, if the result of the inspection elected in paragraph 12C are satisfactory to buyers, meaning they're okay with it, buyer will present all reports in their entirety to seller, accept the property and information stated in the report, and agree to the release. 2, if the results of any inspection elected in paragraph 12C are unsatisfactory to buyer, meaning they're not okay with certain items in there, buyer will present all reports in their entirety to seller. So what does that mean, present all reports in their entirety? Does that mean send a summary sheet? Yeah, I just caught that, Brooks. Remember, we were just talking about that this morning, about the summary sheet. This is saying send the whole report to the seller.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Well, there it states right there in the contract, its entirety, not page 36 through 48. You know, you send the whole darn thing. So their entirety to seller and terminate this agreement by written notice to seller. And by written notice, that means a termination form, PAR form, with all deposit monies returned to buyer. Okay. Or option 3, negotiate the terms, the report. If the results of any inspection elected in paragraph 12C are unsatisfactory to buyer, buyer will present all reports in their entirety to seller with a written corrective proposal. Okay. Now, the written corrective proposal, or buyer's reply to inspection form, may but is not required to include the name of a property license or qualified professional to perform the corrections requested in the proposal. Provisions for payment, including retests and a projected date for completion of the corrections. Buyer agrees that seller will not be held liable for corrections that do not comply with mortgage lender or governmental requirements if performed in a workmanlike manner according to the terms of buyer's proposal. So you get 10 days to do one of these 3 things: accept it, terminate, and get your deposit money back, or negotiate. If you decide to negotiate, we go to the next step. Now you get 5 days. Following the end of the contingency period, the first 10 days, buyer and seller will have blank days, 5 if not specified, for a negotiation period. During the negotiation period, 1, seller will acknowledge in writing seller's agreement to satisfy all the terms. Okay, so the buyer sends this laundry list of items and the seller goes, all right, I'll do it. Okay, then you're done. You have a deal. Number 2, buyer and seller will negotiate another mutually acceptable written agreement. Okay, the seller says, well, you have 15 items here. I'll take care of 10 of them. The other 5, the loose toilet, you take care of. Okay, and the buyer agrees. The buyer agrees, you got a deal. Okay. If seller agrees to satisfy all the terms of buyer's proposal, or buyer and seller enter into another mutually acceptable written agreement, buyer accepts the property and agrees to the release. And the negotiation period ends. Okay. So what was I going to say? If one thing it doesn't say in there for this negotiation period, the 5 days, okay, is the buyer can terminate. Okay, they can terminate in the 10 days, but they can't terminate during these next 5 days. Okay, let's be aware of that. So if you're in the middle of the negotiation period and the seller's like, I'm absolutely not doing anything, okay, what should you do as a buyer agent? Let's just say they say it on the first day. As soon as you turn it in, you have 5 days, and they're saying, nope.
So they're saying no.
Yes, let's assume it's written. Seth wants to know if it was written.
Sorry.
They can't hear you. They can't hear you here. So, but what you need to do then is, then the seller, if your buyer doesn't want to accept it, then the buyer needs to either wait until their next 2 days, okay, which we'll go over here, or ask the seller to terminate. But the buyer can't terminate during that time. Okay, because there's only 2 choices.
Let's say that it. Pending.
No, we're in the negotiation period. So we're talking about the next 5 days. Yeah. There's no provisions in the contract for the buyer to back out. All right.
Paul,
Yes.
how does the seller reply to the buyer on that form that, for inspections, because there's no place for the seller to reply?
Correct. That's a very good question. They either do it in writing, okay, pretty much in writing. Usually what they do is the list agent will send it via email, okay, and usually it's, heck no, my seller ain't doing nothing, okay. So once that's sent and they're not doing anything, then you as a buyer agent can need to consult with your buyer and just say, hey, what do you want to do? And they'll say, well, we want to terminate. We're going to back out of the deal. So then your next thing is you reach out to the list agent and just say, look, my buyer, they just told me they're going to back out. Okay, so we still have 3 days left of this negotiation period. You can send over the release now, or we'll wait until the negotiation period is over and we'll back out during our 2 days. Okay. Which brings us to the next 2 days, part B here. If no mutually acceptable written agreement is reached, okay, so there you go, Donna. It doesn't have to be in writing. If there is no agreement in writing, okay, or if seller fails to respond during the negotiation period within blank days, 2 if not specified, following the end of the negotiation period, buyer will, 1, accept the property, or 2, terminate and get their deposit money back. So,
The purpose of that form is to start the negotiation
right,
process. Once the negotiation process takes place, regardless of whether it's verbal or in writing, then Donna, everything gets put onto a change in terms addendum.
so these highlighted phrases here, you notice how it says following the end of the negotiation period. So let's say you have the standard 10-5-2, okay? Nothing was changed in the contract. And during the 10 days for the buyer's inspection, they do it in 3 days and reply back the same day, okay? They had 10 days to do it, they respond back in 3. So there are still 7 days left, okay? That still stays there, okay? It doesn't mean the negotiation period now starts at that moment, okay? The negotiation period still starts on day 11. It's just now the negotiation period actually is extended from day 4 up to day 15, okay? Because just remember, at any point during that 10 days, the buyer can still change their mind and say, hey, maybe I want to add this item, or you know what, I'm out. I don't want the house now. That's still their right during the 10 days. Okay. Does everybody understand that? Okay. Yep. So then the next 5 days, let's say you come to an agreement in X amount of days, does that end the negotiation period? Anybody? Yeah, what I'm saying is if we come to an agreement during the negotiation period in 2 days, does that end the negotiation period?
If nothing's signed, it still doesn't, the negotiation period, you can negotiate until something's signed.
Right,
Once there's a mutual agreement. Now, if you start negotiating during the inspection period, let's say you start negotiating on day 5 and the inspection period's day 10, you can continue to have more inspections.
right. Yep. Look back at line number 463 there. If seller agrees to satisfy all the terms of the buyer's proposal, or buyer and seller enter into another mutually acceptable written agreement, buyer accepts the property and agrees to release in paragraph 28 of this agreement, and the negotiation period ends.
Now, one thing you can do is if you're day 3 or 4 and you're not getting anywhere and you're representing the buyer, you either need to, you could extend the period. You could send a change of terms to extend the negotiation period. Or if you're not getting anywhere with the seller at the end of that negotiation period, you need to either accept it or terminate.
Right.
But you can extend it if everybody mutually agrees. And the reason for the extension might be that you're still waiting on an estimate from someone.
Correct. Yep. Seth says, don't do anything verbally. Okay.
Ever. Because that always comes back to haunt us.
Yep. So line 472, if buyer and seller do not reach a mutually acceptable written agreement and buyer does not terminate this agreement by written notice to seller within their time allotted in paragraph 13B, or I'm sorry, 13B, 3B, the 2 days, buyer will accept the property and agree to the release. Okay. Ongoing negotiations do not automatically extend the negotiation period. So exactly what Tim just said. You need an extension through a change in terms form.
And it needs to be signed by everybody in time,
Yes.
you know.
476, paragraph C here. If a report reveals the need to expand or replace the existing individual on-lot sewage disposal system, seller may within 25 days, if not specified, of receiving the report, submit a proposal to buyer. The proposal will include, but not be limited to, the name of the company to perform the expansion or replacement, provisions for payment, including retest, and a projected completion date for corrective measures. Within 5 days of receiving seller's proposal, or if no proposal is provided within the stated time, buyer will notify seller in writing of buyer's choice to 1, agree to the terms of the proposal, 2, terminate, or 3, accept the property and the existing system and agree to the release. Okay. So this is talking about septic repair. If buyer fails to respond within the time stated in paragraph 13C or fails to terminate this agreement by written notice to seller within that time frame, buyer will accept the property. So there you have it. Anybody have any questions? Okay. Thursday, we will continue with titles and surveys. We'll go over to the part that I know a lot of people just kind of skim over because it doesn't pertain too much to what we're selling here in Central PA, but it's still important to understand. Okay. Especially if a seller says, "What's this?" So, anything else, Brooks?
Just thinking back on it, you know, I think our recommendation for that additional inspection line that we were going over earlier, weren't we talking about adding, if you're going to do an invasive inspection, such as one of those drive it inspections, that might be a good spot to list that type of inspection.
Actually, I think the last time we did this, you said the same thing again. We went back and you said an invasive inspection could be put in that blank space so that everybody's agreeing to it. Yeah. That's a very good suggestion. Again, any questions, please feel free to give me a call, Brooks a call, Tim a call, and we'll help you through it. We'll help you navigate it. Because again, I just read this section 2 times today and picked up 2 new things. So, all right, folks, thank you so much. And we'll see you
job.
Thursday, okay?
Thanks.
Yep.